Got it. For the recording, welcome back. We are ACI Course 7, Class 7 already on February 9th, 2025. Let's gather our minds here as we usually do. Please bring your attention to your breath until you hear from me again. Now bring to mind that being who for you is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom, and see them there with you. They are gazing at you with their unconditional love for you. Smiling at you with their holy great compassion. Their wisdom radiating from them. That beautiful golden glow encompassing you in its light. And then we hear them say, bring to mind someone you know who's hurting in some way. Feel how much you would like to be able to help them. Recognize how the worldly ways we try fall short. How wonderful it will be when we can also help them in some deep and ultimate way, a way through which they will go on to stop their distress forever. Deep down, we know this is possible. Learning about karma and emptiness, we glimpse how it's possible. And so I invite you to grow that wish into a longing. And that longing into an intention. And with that intention, turn your mind back to your precious holy being. We know that they know what we need to know, what we need to learn yet, what we need to do yet to become one who can help this other in this deep and ultimate way. And so we ask them, please teach us that. And they are so happy that we've asked. Of course, they agree. Our gratitude arises. We want to offer them something exquisite. And so we think of the perfect world they are teaching us how to create. We imagine we can hold it in our hands, and we offer it to them, following it with our promise to practice what they teach us, using our refuge prayer to make our promise. Here is the great earth, filled with fragrant incense and covered with a blanket of flowers. The great mountain, 4 lands, wearing the jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnirya Tayami. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may all beings reach their total awakening for the benefit of every single other. Last class, we learned about that topic called the 4 chains. Those 4 mental afflictions that must all 4 be present for 16 of those root bodhisattva downfalls to occur, to be fully broken. So there are 4 things we want to understand pretty well. And so who wants to be brave enough to share what those 4 are? Going once. Okay, Ross.
Yeah, so the first one is I have the desire in my mind to commit the wrong deed again in the future.
Okay,
So
that's not number 1, but that's a one of them. So
it's
go
not
ahead.
number 1?
Not number 1.
Okay, I thought it's number 1. Okay, then I have the lack of any shame or consideration.
Right.
Okay, and then I have the sense of enjoyment and satisfaction after I did the wrong deed.
Okay.
And then the third one is like failing to consider what I did was wrong.
Correct. Correct. So
And
technically
was
that's
it?
the first one, but the first one is
Oh,
that whether the thing was right or wrong.
but
And
in
it's
the reading, but in the reading it was in this order, right? Desire, lack, sense, and the last one was the failing to consider it was wrong.
yeah, I think that has to do with the syntax order, because then when they teach about the big bad deed, medium bad deed, lesser bad deed, it says if you have the first one where things are not wrong, then you only need one or two of the others. Do you remember that? So
Mhm.
that, don't mark yourself wrong. If you have all four, I don't care what order.
Okay.
As long as once you understand that the thinking it's right or wrong is a major player.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Got it.
Good. So thank you. So everybody got what he said, right? The four. Okay. Because you all know it. Good. It takes all four present in your mind for the deed that we do to break the bodhisattva vow. It doesn't take all four to make a negative karma, obviously. Right? So it's being very specifically stated here. Then your quiz asks, what's the difference between shame and consideration? The notsa and trelya. Anybody want to try to do that one? Going once, going twice. Joanna, you can do it.
So consideration would be, I'm thinking about what other people think if I do it.
Yeah,
And the shame one is, what would I think about myself? Do I want to be this kind of person? So this is more considering my own
right,
self picture.
right. Regardless of whether anyone would know or not. Yeah. And because of those two states of mind, you avoid doing the behavior you were thinking about doing for one or both of those reasons, right? Okay. So they're very protective states of mind to be, thinking as we're making a choice of behavior. Will I be proud of myself regardless of anybody else? And what impact will this have on others? Whether we're caring about what they'll think about me or what they'll think about Buddhism or any other impact we might have. Maybe our deed that they see us do, they will think, oh, then I should do that one too. And it's like, whoa, then I'm not going to do that because that'll make them do it someday. Right. So there's a lot in that one called consideration for others. Then your quiz said, why is it wrong to feel comforted by the fact that you can retake your vows after you've broken a root vow? Because we learned that even though we can restore the vow, we can't restore it to its fully enough power for it to help us restore the virtue accumulation that could ripen into reaching the first bodhisattva bhumi in this lifetime. And I don't know the exact mechanism of that. And regardless of understanding it, it would catch our attention, because reaching the first bodhisattva bhumi in this lifetime is sort of like what we're driven to try to achieve. And whether we actually achieve it or not in this lifetime is one thing. But if we fully break a bodhisattva root vow, there's no hope. And then that would discourage us in such a way that we'd even quit trying. And then that makes it worse, of course. Then lastly, on your quiz, it said, there's 3 ways you can lose your vows. What are those 3 ways? And remember, there's sort of 3 ways in which there's actually 4. One is to hold wrong views. right? To go from right view to wrong view. The second was to give up bodhicitta. Either, right, I quit, or giving your vows back formally. And then the third one is to do any one of the 16 with all 4 chains intact. Because if you break one root downfall, you've broken them all. Right. Okay. All right. So we've finished the 8 root downfalls. They're called the tsatung. Show you my vocabulary list. It's a long one. Tsatung. It means the root vow. This class, the next couple of classes, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Maybe not 10. Are covering the secondary vows. Secondary vows are called nejes. Neje means, he doesn't say what it means. It means a done bad. I did a done bad. And we're studying the nejes explanation by Master Chandra Gomi. So his text that you'll be using. So now I can get rid of my vocabulary because that's it. So we'll be learning the difference between the root vows and the secondary vows. And one of the differences is that to restore the secondary vows, we confess them to at least one other person who would understand what we're explaining, along with a doing of the 4 powers. And those secondary vows can be fully restored by confession. There are 2 main ways of breaking a secondary vow, 2 like motivations behind doing the deed that breaks the vow. One of them is that we do the deed in a mentally afflicted way, meaning we have active wrong states of mind that push us to do the deed, like anger, jealousy, pride, greed, resentment, revenge, all of those, ugly emotions that make us do the ugly things that we do. However, we can also break these vows in what's called a non-afflicted way, which means we break them just out of laziness or out of not paying close enough attention to our behavior. So one could argue that even when we're lazily not paying attention and letting our behavior be on by habit, on like automatic pilot, that's still afflicted, of course. We're afflicted with our ignorance, our selfishness, our I want, I don't want, but they're not, being influenced by these major full-on mental afflictions. And so the way the seed planting is happening is different. And they're making it clear that either way, the doing of the deed breaks the vow. Right. So these secondary vows are grouped according to the Bodhisattva's efforts to practice the 6 perfections. So remember, until we're on the first Bodhisattva Bhumi, well, no, let me start over. So before we have experienced ultimate reality for the first time, our efforts and our perfections of giving, moral discipline, etc., are being done with our intellectual understanding of emptiness and karma. And we are gathering the goodness needed to see emptiness directly. And then after that, we continue to do those deeds of giving, moral discipline, etc. Now, with a mind that knows the emptiness and dependent origination of the 3 spheres of the given situation. And so now our deeds done actually do become causes for our Buddhahood, whereas before that they were causes for our Buddhahood indirectly because they were more directly causes for our wisdom. And it's the wisdom that makes our 6 perfections the perfectionizers, right? That leads them to being the perfections of a Buddha you, right? So following me? So these secondary vows, they're directed towards behaviors that damage our efforts to practice giving, moral discipline, not getting angry, etc., so that we can gather the goodness to get us to direct perception of emptiness, and then afterwards to gather the goodness that will move us to our Buddhahood. Right? So the first 7 of the secondary vows are said to be 7 behaviors that act against the perfection of giving. So the vowed behavior is to avoid certain behavior that would act against our perfection of giving. Right? It's like it's a double negative going on here. So we would say, for instance, the first of the secondary vows is, I will avoid not offering the 3 to the 3 jewels. Like the actual verse is, I will avoid not offering the 3 to the 3. So we need to know what 3 to what 3. What this is speaking to is that we make offerings of our body, speech, and mind to the 3 jewels a minimum of once a day. Hopefully more than that. So the 3 jewels we know, Buddha jewel, Dharma jewel, Sangha jewel. And then thanks to our Holy Lama Geshe Michael, he makes it clear that the Buddha jewel is not Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha. It's the emptiness of Shakyamuni Buddha's mind and the emptiness of our own mind, which once we understand about emptiness and dependent origination, we understand that that emptiness that we're understanding about their mind is in fact the promise that we can reach it as well. So we're not taking refuge in this being Buddha who doesn't even walk among us anymore. We're taking refuge in their emptiness, which is how they became Buddha, from having not been one. Then the Dharma jewel refers to the cessation in the mind of a being who's experienced emptiness directly and the subsequent realizations that they gain by applying that wisdom to their behavior to weed out those mental afflictions. So the Dharma jewel isn't the teachings, the books, etc. It's the wisdom gained by someone who used those teachings to reach that experience of ultimate reality, from which they have eliminated 3 wrong beliefs, 3 out of 84,000, but 3 important ones. And so we're taking refuge in that state of mind of being free of those 3 mental afflictions and how we get there. And then the Sangha jewel means any being who has had that direct perception of emptiness and so now has that wisdom that they can share or demonstrate with others. So again, we're not taking refuge in the Sangha as in the ordained people, but rather in those who have seen emptiness directly, ordained or not. The common denominator in this, of course, is the understanding of emptiness and dependent origination. So when we are taking refuge, we want to be having some level of understanding of the marriage of karma and emptiness in mind as we are doing our refuge taking, whether it's in words or in actions. And then to offer our body, speech, and mind, it means doing something physical that demonstrates that you are choosing your behavior according to your growing wisdom. By speech, refuge is you're saying something through which you demonstrate to yourself that you're trying to remember, you're trying to make your choices with some understanding of karma and emptiness in mind. Body, speech, mind. And then the mind offering is the thinking of the karma and emptiness that you're doing as you offer your body and your speech. And so mostly we make our offerings of body, speech, mind to the 3 jewels by way of our prayer and our prostrations. And so we sort of are on automatic pilot. As we prostrate, I offer my body, my speech, my mind to you, the 3 jewels, for the benefit of all sentient beings. And we hear ourselves doing it, so we get credit. And the credit is stronger the more consciously, intentionally we're holding in mind what we're doing as we do that. And, you know, I admit I'm on automatic pilot when I'm doing mine mostly. And I'm just missing an opportunity, right, to plant seeds in a more strong way. So I encourage you, don't get sloppy like I've gotten. So first of the secondary vows is don't forget to, at minimum, do something at least once a day that shows yourself that you have reverence for the 3 jewels. And to fail to do that is what breaks the vow. All right. Second vow. I will avoid allowing improper thoughts of desire to go on. So we have desire constantly. That's what moves us to do something, to do anything, is out of some kind of desire. Whether it's a desire to avoid or a desire to get. we're motivated by desire. And so it's not that this vow is saying, I will avoid it to go on. It's wrong desire. And wrong desire means that because of our misunderstanding of how we satisfy that desire, or how we even try, we are willing to make choices that are harmful to another in order to get what we want. So when we're talking about desire, we're talking about sensual desires, food, any pleasures of the senses, food, drink, sex, anything. There's also a state of desire where we're never satisfied with what we have. And then there's a state of desire for, it's an attachment to having others praise and honor us. So when we are in any situation where those states of mind are arising strongly, to let those states of mind continue to influence our decision-making right up to doing the deed is what it means to allow thoughts of desire to go on, right? It means ignorant desire is what's underneath our decision about what to do next, to get or avoid the thing we're after. To let those thoughts go on and you choose your behavior and you do your behavior is what breaks this vow. When we are in such a situation and we're recognizing, oh, you know, this desire for that last piece of cake, even though I know that it's got somebody else's name on it, I let that desire go so far that I take the piece or take a bite out of the piece or change the name on it. And I don't struggle against that, breaks the vow. If I'm struggling, like, oh, that piece of cake, oh man, I really want to bite. I know it belongs to somebody else. I really shouldn't take it. And you take a bite, right? The struggling against it protects your vow. Did you make a seed where somebody's going to take something that was supposed to be yours? Yes. But because you struggled against it, even though you failed in your struggle, you protected this vow. Do you see? So the struggle is protective in these secondary vows. It seems silly. It's like, come on, who's going to struggle and not win the struggle? Right? I think we can all find situations where, you know, not this situation, not that situation, but I could find one, right? Okay. So this wrong desire that they're talking about, letting thoughts go on about, is this willingness to do something that if somebody did it to you, you wouldn't like it. Right? That's the criteria. And when we find ourselves faced with such a situation, struggle, struggle, struggle. Our struggles will help us. And hopefully they will help us avoid the behavior. Then Geshe-la pointed out that there is non-mentally afflicted desire. To just want that piece of cake is not breaking the vow. It's being willing to give in to that wanting the piece of cake to the extent that you take it when it's meant for somebody else. Do you see the difference? We should desire things. It's okay to desire things. Our wisdom desire is the pleasure I want from that thing is not really in it. So if I want the pleasure that I think it's gonna give me, I want to share some pleasure with somebody else. Maybe with it, maybe with something else. Right? Then I can have it. So again, this vow is not saying cut off all desire, and if you don't, you break your vow. Right? It's not just desire. Third one, I will avoid not respecting my elders. Here, the elders that we're talking about are those who have taken their bodhisattva vows before you have, right? I got them on this day. Somebody else got them a week ahead of me. They're my elder, no matter what age they are, no matter their apparent behavior to me. Compare, right? Anyone who has vows, who've had vows longer than I've had vows, is my senior. And this is saying honor and respect that and show it by our behavior. You know, make them a plate of offerings, hold the door open for them, help them in their task. That means we kind of need to know when somebody got their vows. And I don't really know how to know that, right? We don't walk around with little signs, you know, I got my vows in 1993. So, like, because that would be advertising, you know, I'm senior to you. So, I don't know, it might be wise to just assume everybody has vows senior to you and treat everybody this way. And then we wouldn't get close to damaging this bodhisattva vow. And it's interesting, it's in the group having to do with avoiding behaviors that would damage our perfection of giving. So think about the connection there. With all of these, think about the connection. The first one is failing to give my body, speech, and mind, make my body, speech, mind offering to the three jewels. The second one, letting improper thoughts of desire to go on. What does that have to do with giving or not giving? Yeah, you know, I either take the cake or I leave it for the other guy, or I get it out of the refrigerator and I go take it to them. But it's not me giving them the cake because it was theirs to begin with. It had their name on them. But it's seed planting that would make it harder for us to give something that is ours to give when we have the opportunity to do so. Because anything that increases our attachment to stuff decreases our ability to let go of it, to give it away. And the beauty of our perfection of giving practices grows in us this letting go of our mindness of things. This belongs to me. This is mine. I need this to survive. As our relationship with our things and our reputations and, you know, things that are part of us get looser and looser, our ability to give them away at a moment's notice when somebody else could benefit from them, right? It gets so much easier when your sense of this thing is the source of my safety, my happiness, right? When they're not that anymore, great, somebody else wants them, here, right here, here. So these vows are showing us where we block that ability. And as we reach that state of mind that, like, my stuff isn't my safety, my comfort, my protection, it's actually kind of a burden. And we move into the perfection of moral discipline. we do our wrong deeds trying to protect ourselves and our stuff. And when we don't need to protect our stuff anymore, our practice of moral discipline gets that much easier. And when our practice of moral discipline gets easier, we have less need to protect ourselves. And then our practice of not getting angry gets easier. Do you see? Each one builds on the next. So these first 7 are an important foundation for the others to come. So this one, I will avoid not respecting my elders. What has that got to do with the perfection of giving? Think about it. Number 4, I will avoid not answering a question. Do you think of answering questions as being part of your perfection of giving? Yeah, it is. Even just answering, where's the coffee shop close to here? You know, you can say, look it up on your phone, which is an answer. Or you can say, there's a good one down the block and to the left. There's another one down the block and to the right and then to the left, right? You can take your time to answer. You can be flippant or you can ignore them. This vow is saying, if the question was a sincere one, then don't give an irrelevant or flippant or inadequate answer. So it's not just a Dharma question. It's, especially a Dharma question, but this is talking about any question. And to not answer a question or to give a flippant answer, which I'm prone to do, means that you disrespect the need of the person who's asked the question. Right? You think, come on, they know that. Or that's a silly thing to ask, right? We have some judgment about it and we answer or don't answer based on that judgment. A bodhisattva has pledged to help other beings be happy, worldly and ultimately. And does it feel good to get a flippant, disrespectful answer or no answer at all? No. Yeah. So now there are these things called nyemes. Ooh, I didn't write that in my vocabulary. Nyeme. A nyeme means an exception to the rule. Okay, got it. I'm going to unshare. There are lists of these exceptions for certain of these different vows. So for this one, number 3, not respecting the elders, and number 4, not answering a question or answering flippantly. You don't break either one of those. If you are sick, and so you can't show your respect and you can't answer. If you are asleep, if you're too groggy, if you are in a situation where you were teaching and the question interrupts the flow, you don't break this by not answering. If you are listening to a Dharma talk and someone ask you the question, and answering the question would distract yourself and others, right? Or you would disrupt the whole teaching, then you don't break the vow by not answering. And then lastly, and we'll hear this one repeatedly, if you need to teach the person a valuable lesson by not answering or giving the flippant answer, you don't break the vow by doing so. However, points out Geshe Michael, we can easily fool ourselves with this one by thinking we know what the other person's lesson needs to be, or that we know that by our behavior they'll get the lesson we intend for them to get. Until we are at a certain level of perception of another's mind and karma, we're fooling ourselves if we think, oh, I can teach them a lesson in this way. Now, it implies, however, that there will come a time in your bodhisattva hood where you will be in the position to see that you could help them in a deep way by doing a behavior that would appear to break your vow. And we'll have another vow that says, I'm willing to do that for them, for their benefit. But until we're at that level, right, it's tricky business to say, I was going on the exception of teaching them a lesson. Okay. Number 5. I know this is just dry lists, and I'm sorry. We've got 46 of them to do. Not all tonight. Number 5, I will avoid not accepting a sincere invitation. So any invitation, but it's not accepting the invitation out of pride, out of anger, or out of just plain laziness is what breaks this vow. It has the exceptions, the nyemes. One of them is if you're sick. I'm sorry, I'm too sick to go to lunch with you. Second, if you've already accepted another invitation and you can't be in 2 places at one time yet, you don't break your vow by saying no to the second one. Another nyeme, if it's too far away and it would be difficult or dangerous for you to get there, you may say no without breaking the vow. If you are aware that the invitation was given out of some wrong motivation and you don't accept it, you don't break the vow. If by accepting the invitation, it diverts you from some other virtuous act, you don't break the vow. Another kind of slippery one, because suppose someone we don't want to go to lunch with invites us to lunch, and we're looking for some reason why not to go to lunch without breaking the vow. We would go, I think the temple needs to be swept. I'm so sorry. I need to go do the virtuous act of sweeping the temple, so I can't go to lunch with you. Is it a virtuous act? Yes. But come on, honestly. If they hadn't invited you to lunch that you didn't want to go, you wouldn't have gone and swept the temple. It wasn't like you already had the right intention to go sweep the temple. Do you see? Slippery. Then, if you are very wise, and you need to teach that person a lesson. You might not accept their offering, right? Don't slippery that one. Notice, said Geshe Michael, that just not liking the person is not in the exceptions. So as a bodhisattva, we have pledged to become a being that will bring all being to their ultimate happiness. And it doesn't mean all the beings that I like. It means everybody. And so if somebody who doesn't like you invites you to lunch, sorry, go. Make them happy. Be kind. You might surprise yourself and find that, oh my gosh, they've got some likable qualities after all. I mean, after all, they bought me lunch. Or maybe you beat them to the check, right? After all, I got to buy them lunch. Right? They just gave me the opportunity to get some great practice of giving merit, right? Okay. As bodhisattvas, all those beings are our children. Yes, they are all our mothers, which is how we grew our bodhicitta. But now that we have our bodhicitta, now they are all our children. Okay. Number 6, I will avoid not accepting money, gifts, etc. when they are sincerely offered. Wait a minute, we're working on our perfection of giving. What does that have to do with accepting offerings? Think about it. The Nyemes here. If you know you'll get attached to the money or gift that they are offering you, you can respectfully refuse it. Because to be attached means it's mine. If anybody tries to get it, use it, take it from me, I'm justified in doing some unkind thing to keep it. Right? And so if somebody's going to give you something that you're going to, you know that's going to happen, it's all right to say, thank you so much, but no, thank you. And you don't break the vow. Secondly, if you think that they would later regret having given it to you, then you don't break the vow by saying politely, thank you, but no, thank you. Right? We heard this story once. Ken Rinpoche had given this inspiring class to a group of people in Washington, D.C., in the home of a very wealthy woman. And she was so inspired that at the end of class, she said, Rinpoche, I want to give you this house so that you can have it to live in and use as a Dharma center. And please bring your Sangha to Washington, D.C. I want to give you this house. And it's like they had no place at that time. It would have solved a big problem. But he saw that she was in this blush of the inspiration of that class. And given a little bit of time, when she found herself needing to find a new place to live, right, and need to go buy a new place, she would have thought, whoa, why did I do that? And that regret for such a good thing is such a negative thing that he said, thank you, that's so generous, but I can't accept it. There's other things, other situations will come up. So he probably hurt her feelings by not accepting it. But he saw that it would be worse. Third, if you think what's being offered could be stolen goods, we don't break the vow by not accepting it. And you know how you would know that, I don't know. But if you had any suspicion whatsoever, if you're brave enough, you ask them. But even still, you know, not quite sure if you could trust the answer. But to the best of our judgment. And then if you have reason to believe it will financially hurt the person to accept what they're offering, then you can decline it. And lastly, if it would be a problem, I'm sorry, two more. If you have reason to believe that they had already dedicated it to someone else, like suppose somebody had already pledged their $10,000 to some other project and now they hear yours. And it's like, oh no, I want my 10,000 to go to you. And that means the one it had been pledged to, whether they knew it or not, has been diverted to you. You don't break this vow by saying, no, no, please. I can't accept it. And then lastly, if it would be a problem for you to have it, like it would disturb others to see you with it. And, you know, I don't know, if you were an ordained person in a culture where the expectation of the ordained were to wear their robes all the time and never any jewelry. But unbeknownst to everybody else, you were Bodhisattva and even had Diamond Way vows, and you had a student who offered you, you know, a big diamond. But you as the ordained person would not wear this diamond necklace around your neck to show it off for everybody, because it would damage the whole Sangha's reputation, even though it would be a really, really great good deed for that person to offer you that piece of jewelry. As an ordained person, you don't have jewelry, right? You don't wear jewelry. So delicate situation. As a bodhisattva, yes, you would accept it if it fits all these other criteria, with the intention that when you find the next person who would benefit from it, you're going to pass it right along. Yeah. Okay. So number 6, I will avoid not accepting money and gifts when they are sincerely offered. Number 7, I will avoid not giving the Dharma to a person who wants it. So the motivation for breaking this vow is out of laziness. I just don't feel like going to the trouble to share the Dharma. Or out of anger, I'm mad at that person or mad at somebody, so I'm not going to comply. Or any other mental affliction other than attachment. So why did they specify it's attachment to the Dharma when we're failing to give the Dharma is not included in this secondary vow? Any guesses? Because it's a root vow. Right? We had a root vow that said, I will avoid failing to give the Dharma out of pride and possessiveness. So if we fail to give the Dharma out of attachment, we haven't damaged the number 7 secondary vow. We've damaged or broken our root vow. So that's why they make it clear in the secondary vow that it's not out of attachment that we fail to give. Right? Do you see? It doesn't mean if you fail to give out of attachment, you're okay. It means you broke the root vow, right? So, but what does it mean to fail to give the Dharma? Why would anybody do that? You know, do you have the file for the Heart Sutra? Sure. But one could be in a situation where, suppose you're teaching emptiness and you leave out a little link. Would you like a link that might help people really put it all together and come up with some deeper understandings? But out of your wanting to be the best on the block, you know, I'm the teacher, I need to stay above everybody. I'll just leave out this one little link. If they figure it out themselves, great, but I'll keep something for later. Do you see? It's ugly. And so it would be this state of mind of out of possessiveness. I'm going to keep something for myself because it keeps the hierarchy in place. That's the root vow. So this not giving, secondary not giving the vow is, you know, out of any other mental affliction or just plain, I don't feel like it. For a bodhisattva, I don't feel like it is an inadequate excuse. All right. There are exceptions to the rule. Let me give you those and then we'll take a break. If you're sick, if you need to teach somebody a lesson and you know what that all means. If the student is just asking for the teachings to have an opportunity to be critical or disrespectful of you, like if you somehow know that, you can not agree to give the teachings and not break this vow. If you know that the person asking just couldn't understand the answer to the question they're asking, you don't break the vow by not answering it. One of these exceptions is if they are not sitting properly. I'm not exactly sure what that means. But in this tradition, there are certain like body postures and things we do with our physical body that convey disrespect to the teacher or the place that we are in. And that's culturally dictated. Like in the Buddhist tradition, to show the bottoms of your feet towards the teacher, towards the altar, towards the statue is considered, you know, like the worst thing that we can do. But growing up in the West, I would never have known that if somebody hadn't told me, okay? Because it's not an automatic thing. So according to one's own culture, what kinds of behaviors are disrespectful and what kinds of behaviors show respect, if the person asking for teachings is somehow demonstrating their disrespect for you and or the teachings, it's a clue that even though they're asking, right, they're not really interested. Okay. If we're still doing the exceptions to the rule, if you know that they would freak out if you taught it to them, then you don't break the vow by not giving the teaching. If you believe they are not really interested in what you are teaching, or if they have deep wrong views, like we all do, but not just wrong view, like clinging to their own view. And if you know they won't follow the teachings, even if you give it to them, and if you think somehow the teachings you give would allow them to behave even worse than they are now, somehow, or if you know they would take those teachings out to those who are not ready. All of these reasons why you don't break the not sharing the Dharma when you're asked. But mostly, people are sincere. They do want to know. You can adjust your level of teaching to their need. Right? We're learning about all of that. Okay, let's take our break. I'm pausing recording. So let's carry on. The next 9 vows are vows, they're vows to avoid behaviors that would go against our perfection of moral discipline. Moral discipline is avoiding harming others in obvious and subtle ways. So number 8, I will avoid not reaching out to those of sullied morality. So sullied morality means someone who has broken their vows, or someone who does wrong deeds or has done wrong deeds, anyone with a poor morality. We have a tendency to avoid people that do behaviors that we don't do, right? That we've learned to avoid. Like, I don't hang out with drug gangs, in the alley, because I don't do that kind of behavior. And so because I'm afraid of them, I even avoid it. And it's like, I'm not saying go to the drug gang in the alley. But as a bodhisattva, our attitude towards them would be one of compassion. And I hope someday I have the strength to help those apparent people that think that what they're doing is right when it's not right. More likely, we might know someone who, like, maybe is closer to our own community, whether it's a Dharma community or a neighborhood community, and they misbehave in some way. And so they tend to be ostracized, and nobody helps them. And maybe, right, you, the bodhisattva, would break this if you had some opportunity to reach out to help them in some way, and we didn't. So I don't know, just a silly example, that person in the neighborhood that nobody likes because they misbehave, their lawn is overgrown and it needs mowing. And you, the bodhisattva, get brave enough to go knock on the door. Hey, can I mow your lawn for you free? And if they say no, okay, fine, I tried. If they say yes, great, you mow the lawn, and leave. So to just not bother when we could have would be breaking this vow. And it gets a little slippery because there's always somebody in the neighborhood, right, that would fit this. And to what extent do I have to go find them and take their garbage out for them to not break this vow? And when the circumstance is there and we're aware of it, it presents itself. Notice, no, right? They're not my problem. They're a problem person. That's what we're working with for our bodhisattva vows. Cashless said, as bodhisattvas, we can't just ignore those people that we don't like or are a little afraid of or we think are bad, they are suffering more than the rest. And their suffering will be even worse when they are reaping the results of their not kind behavior. So our compassion would really be greater for them than it would be for the people that we enjoy having compassion for. Now, if and when we do reach out and try to help these folks, we of course must not become influenced by their morality. And if we see that we are susceptible to that, we don't break the vow by not staying involved, right? You may try and then have to back out. The scripture also says there are times when people need to be moved on, meaning if this is occurring within a Dharma community and somebody is repeatedly not abiding by the agreement, then someone may need to get that person out of the community. It's happened a couple of times, unfortunately, at Diamond Mountain. And it's unfortunate, and it's not a not bodhisattva activity to move those people on. But it needs to be done in a very skillful way, of course. So there are exceptions to this, failing to reach out to someone of solid morality. One of them, if you getting close to them would alienate others, then you don't break the vow if you don't reach out. If you would be badly influenced by them, you don't break the vow if you don't get involved. If you are a great bodhisattva and you need to teach them a lesson, then Geshe-la said something that I don't understand. He said there are certain ordained, prescribed behaviors that requires ordained people to not follow this vow within their system. So I don't really understand what that means. My ordained vows are not, I don't have full vows, so I don't know what that's talking about. But I just wanted to be complete, so you've heard it. Anyway, number 9. I will avoid failing to follow the rules, which, if followed, would inspire faith in other people. So mostly this is directed at ordained practitioners who also have bodhisattva vows. So the ordained are expected to uphold certain behaviors. And then in order to uphold the reputation of Buddhism and of their monastery. And then as bodhisattvas, the bodhisattva has a wider range of behavior and interaction with the non-ordained world that would look like they're breaking their ordained person vows. And so they need to be doubly careful with keeping their bodhisattva vows as to how they go about doing it, so that they don't give the ordained a bad reputation. And Geshe-la says, but it applies to any morality. In the sense of the way we behave in the awareness of others, influences those others. It particularly if those others know you're Buddhist, right? Even know maybe you're Bodhisattva Buddhist. You know, in my community, nobody would know that. There are not many. But they do know we're Buddhist. Or they know I'm something, right? Because everybody knows me as that lady who wears white. And so that means we're like a little goldfish in a goldfish bowl. And people pay a little bit more attention to you and the example that you set. And so then even our casual conversation is having a greater impact on people than it would if we were, you know, ordinary me and you. And so this vow is as bodhisattvas, we have determined to be a positive influence, an uplifting influence to the best of our ability on anybody at any time. So we behave in order to protect others' faith. If you're in a Christian group, act like a good Christian. You know, it doesn't matter if you're one or not. Now, you know, if they ask you specifically, are you Christian? You know, give some good answer that's open-ended enough. Yeah. Okay. So the rules that we are following well are avoiding those 10 non-virtues, avoiding those 5 lifetime lay behaviors, and doing it with this attitude of setting this good example. All right, number 10. I will avoid performing deeds which are only of lesser benefit for all living beings. This one sounds impossible to keep. So hopefully it's more specific. I will avoid performing deeds which are only of lesser benefit for all living beings. So in Buddhism, there are natural rules and prescribed rules. The natural rules is the morality code that's universal. Those 10 non-virtues: to avoid killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, right? Lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, useless speech, coveting, ill will, wrong view. Not because those deeds are inherently negative, but because the results they bring make us unhappy and make us want to do more. The proscribed rules came about during Buddha's time when one of his disciples misbehaved in some way that caused harm to others. And so in order to prevent that from happening again, Buddha made a rule about avoiding that behavior. And that's how the monks and nuns vows came to be. And somehow it's how the Bodhisattva vows, right, became delineated as well. Mostly the rules of surrounding ordained life have to do with restricted ownership of things and how to get along with others when you live together, and then how to help them maintain their focus on their practice. Our Vinaya level practice is avoid, avoid, avoid. Bodhisattva vows, as we know, are about helping others. Okay? Giving more of ourselves, being more active, engaging in worldly life in a way that helps us create the goodness that will gain the realizations necessary. So it seems like ordained and bodhisattva are contradictory. When we add diamond way vows, those add another level, especially for an ordained person who has diamond way vows. How do they live according to those without harming their ordained vows in a way that won't cause a bad reputation for other ordained? And it's tricky to do. And when a person in that situation has a situation where they need to choose between an ordained vow or a bodhisattva vow or a diamond way vow, this vow, the bodhisattva secondary vow, says if you choose to uphold the ordained vow as more important than your diamond way vow, you have in fact broken your bodhisattva secondary vow. So it takes some training to be able to have all three, obviously. But in the same way, if we as bodhisattvas are working really hard on our 10 non-virtues, and then there's some conflict, I really can't imagine what it might be, but some conflict between your 10 non-virtues and your bodhisattva behavior. If you say, no, I'm not going to take care of that person because I have to protect my 10 non-virtue, that would be harming this vow, because we've put our own need to protect our whatever over doing something to help that other person. Okay, I hope that was clear. Number 11. I will avoid not breaking the first 7 vows of morality when an extraordinary circumstance requires it. I will avoid not breaking the first 7 vows of morality when an extraordinary circumstance requires it. Geshe says this is the most subtle and the most dangerous of all the secondary vows. And okay, so the 7 vows of morality mean the first 7 of the 10 non-virtues. The 3 of body, the 4 of speech. This is not referring to the ones of mind, coveting, ill will, or wrong view. Only what we do and say. So this is saying there may come a time when you as a bodhisattva find yourself in a situation where you would be willing to kill, steal, sexually misconduct, lie, divisive speech, harsh speech, or useless speech in order to protect and help in a higher way somebody or multiple buddies. It does not mean that you don't get the result of those karmic deeds. You still do. But you, the bodhisattva, are willing to take that negative karmic result someday in order to help this other one, right? In whatever way you're going to help. You break the vow if you don't do that. And that's like scary and dangerous. And they say, however, the term extraordinary circumstance is what helps us understand. For this vow to apply to us, we would have to be a bodhisattva who has been a bodhisattva for trillions of years. So we have perfected our practice of it. We are not yet full Buddhas, but really high level, well-versed, huge merit bodhisattvas. And we must have extraordinary insight into the situation where it would be necessary to do something unusual or even apparently harmful in order to help others. And we must have Mahakaruna, that great compassion that looks on every living being as if they were our only child. And, right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and you must have bodhicitta. Well, like, isn't that already established by having been a bodhisattva for a really long time? Maybe they mean ultimate bodhicitta. It's not quite clear. And you must know there is no other alternative than to break that vow of morality in order to help that person. So it's not enough to just have our bodhisattva vows to be required to break a morality in order to help someone. We have to have these 5 extraordinary qualities to even consider breaking a morality in order to keep our bodhisattva vows. Well, so if you don't see yourself as that level bodhisattva yet, don't think, oh, those 7 moralities are negotiable. They're not. So the classical example, we've heard it in Buddha in one of his previous lifetimes, his previous bodhisattva-hood lifetimes. He was a captain on a ship. And on his ship, he had 500 merchants amongst his group and another guy. And they're on their way home from their trip to the treasure island. And they have all their jewels and stuff. And the ship captain reads the mind of this one guy whose intention is to kill all 500 merchants and probably the captain too, in order to get the jewels, all the jewels. So out of his incredible compassion, the ship captain kills the guy. And when we first hear that story, maybe we hear, oh yeah, his compassion for the 500 guys, right? To protect the 500 guys. But then we hear the rest of the story, and they say his compassion was for the guy who was going to kill the 500 guys, because he knew that the karmic negativity that that guy would make by killing 500 people out of greediness was so horrible that the bodhisattva captain was willing to take on the karma of killing one person to protect that one person from the karma of killing 500. That kind of compassion. The ship captain knew he would reap the result, and he was willing to do it anyway. However, ship captain was also able to direct that man's mind to a higher place, they say. So not only was the bodhisattva willing to take on the karma, which he did, but he also, his compassion allowed that man who was going to kill a whole bunch to actually benefit from getting killed. Curious about the karma, right? So if we don't have that awareness of the other person's motivation, if we don't have sufficient karma to be willing to take that, we don't have sufficient compassion to be willing to take the karma of the negative deed we're willing to do. And if we don't have the ability to help that person's mind by our behavior that breaks the morality, then we don't break this vow by not breaking our morality to help them. Is that clear? Okay. So don't give yourself permission to break those first 7 because you're a great bodhisattva until you have these other criteria involved. Okay. Number 12. I will avoid being engaged in wrong livelihood or getting support in a wrong way to make a living. So this vow is originally geared towards the ordained bodhisattvas. So ordained people traditionally don't work for a living, work for pay. They gather support and they live by donations. And if no donations come, they don't have. When donations come, they use them to support their sangha and others. So there are these 5 behaviors that apparently, as an ordained person, one might slip into in order to influence your potential sponsors, in order to get more sponsorship. And they're called by flattery, by hinting, by baiting, by harassing, or by pretense. So this avoiding wrong livelihood for an ordained person means you are not allowed to try to get your sponsor to offer to you by flattering them. you are not allowed to get them to sponsor you by hinting. You know, it would really be great if some sponsor made the merit of giving $100,000 for the new temple cushions by baiting someone. Baiting means, you know, you put the worm on the hook and then you throw it in the water and the fish eats it. So baiting means you give some attention to the sponsor, special attention to the sponsor, and then they owe you, right? That's baiting somebody. By harassment, you know, knocking on the door, hello, I need your sponsorship. And then the next day, hello, I'm here again. Hello, I'm here again, right? Until they go, okay, get out of here. That's harassing. And then by pretense. So you pretend, you know, that you're some high special amazing being, and they'll get a lot merit if they give to your need. Like, it's pretense. And then for non-ordained people, business people, those 5 still apply, right, in some way. And even not in business, in our negotiations between people, we probably do some of these as well. And then there's a commentary that came later by someone named Master Bodhibhadra. He says, you know, included in this vow is for those who do work for a living, make money for a living. This vow would pertain if we're making a living by any activity that's harmful to others, like pretty directly harmful to others. The examples are trading in alcohol, trading in weapons, trading in silk, working as a butcher, and working for a grinding mill, grinding grains, because you're going to grind bugs. And it seems that there are a whole lot of other works that would be included in there that aren't mentioned. And then if we extend that out, there's like nothing we can do as a human being that doesn't hurt somebody somewhere. And so there are, like, at some point we need to live, at some point we need to make a living. And the key is to be looking at, you know, where's my line that I refuse to cross? You know, yes, I'll work for a grocery store. They sell meat, but I will not work in the meat department. You know, we make that determination. And then maybe at some point it's like, well, I don't even want to work in the grocery store anymore for whatever reason. And then I go and find some other way to make my living. And so they do say that, you know, for instance, if you are a butcher and you've made your livelihood as a butcher and now you've become Buddhist and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. Our responsibility to our family is to not just walk away, but rather get retrained, take the time, get retrained, find some other way to make a living, you know, give away your business or sell it, or I don't know, do something to get yourself out of that situation. And you're not breaking this vow while you're still in the situation as you're working to get yourself out of the situation. So it's a little helpful when we find ourselves, you know, in this position. It's like, oh man, I have a livelihood that I see now I don't want to stay in. Take your time, right, to regroup and move elsewhere, and you're not breaking this vow while you do so. Okay. Number 13. I will avoid acting wild or frivolous. Meaning, meaning acting in a way where we've let our guard down enough that our have selfish habit or old habits of what's fun could come bubbling up, and we end up doing something mean or unkind or harmful because we've gotten a little out of control in our having fun. So this has some exceptions, nyemes. If we're struggling, if we're sincerely struggling to stop, but we can't control ourselves, then as you are having fun and you do something harmful, you get the harmful karma, but you don't break the vow. If you're trying to stop another's grief or depression by having frivolous fun, wasting time with frivolous fun to help someone's grief or depression, you don't damage this vow. If you're doing it to distract somebody from a wrong deed, you don't break the vow. If it would improve the environment to bring others to a better space, you don't break the vow by being silly. Thank goodness. And if it would attract people to Buddhism who wouldn't otherwise be attracted to it, you can be more frivolous and lighthearted in order to attract people to the Buddhist path. Number 14. I will avoid telling others that they need to delay their nirvana or enlightenment in order to help others. I will avoid telling others that they need to delay their progress in order to help others. So there's this Dharma rumor that bodhisattvas delay their enlightenment in order to help others reach it first. There's no better way to help others reach their enlightenment than to do what you need to do to reach yours. And what is it that you do to reach yours? Is you try to help others reach theirs, which is why it looks like bodhisattvas delay their enlightenment, because they're focused on others reaching their enlightenment. But they're doing so in order to reach their own, so that they really can help others reach theirs. Because until we have the omniscience, our bodhisattva deeds trying to help the others aren't exactly what that other needs to give up and take up. It's what the scripture says. It's what our training says to try to help them with. But until we're omniscient, we don't really know exactly. So yes, we're helping the others reach their enlightenment in order to reach our own, in order to really help them reach enlightenment. And maybe by the time we are helping them, they've already done it too, right? Because we got them started. So it may be that a bodhisattva doesn't complete their path in that lifetime, and then they're back in another lifetime doing their bodhisattva deeds again and again and again. And it appears that they're delaying their enlightenment in order to come back again and again to help others, because that's all they do each lifetime is help others. But they themselves are on their trajectory by helping others to their own total enlightenment. And if they're at the threshold for reaching their enlightenment, they will not say, no, I won't do that now because there's people that I need to help. Right? They will not delay their own enlightenment. So to say that to somebody is wrong anyway. So don't tell them that. When you hear that Dharma rumor said by somebody or written in the book, point out to yourself and anybody else who's listening, this is a misunderstanding. Don't disrespect the writer of the book. Say this is a misunderstanding because of this reason. Okay. Number 15. I will avoid not addressing rumors about myself. So you break this vow by not clearing your name when there's something messy going around. But the motivation isn't to get my name cleared. The motivation is to prevent others from collecting the negative karma by criticizing and speaking wrongly of a bodhisattva, even an aspiring bodhisattva. Right? So the bodhisattva doesn't care what the rumor is going around. The bodhisattva cares about the people spreading the rumor and wants to set things right so they stop making that negative karma. Number 16, I will avoid not correcting others, even if it must be done forcefully. I will avoid not correcting others, even if it must be done forcefully. So there may come a time when you, the kind, thoughtful bodhisattva, is in a situation where, in order to protect or guide another person, you have to be forceful or wrathful. Like the mom when the 3-year-old runs out in front of traffic, right? Rah, smack his bottom. You do not do that, right? Mom looks like spitting mad, mean as nails to have an impact on that child that they will not do that again. Is mom mad? No, she's terrified. Right? She's acting out of this incredible love. And it looks forceful. So a bodhisattva that's not willing to be forceful when the time is needed breaks this vow against our vow of our perfection of moral discipline. Do you see? This is slippery. Moral discipline, I'm never going to be angry or hurtful or right ever. So let your 3-year-old run into the street again and again and again, right? Because I can't be, I sit them down, honey, you mustn't do that, right? It takes in some situations. So bodhisattva is willing to be that. So we're talking about probably not a 3-year-old child here. We're, talking about, I don't know, some student maybe. And to be willing to do the necessary, even though they're going to get mad, they're going to dislike you, they're going to, right? They might even walk away out of your love. You be forceful. It's breaking a vow to not do that, given the circumstance that's necessary. Again, it's not carte blanche to let your anger come up and blame people and be mean to people because you're a bodhisattva doing the wrathful thing. Right? That will come back to us also. So, these sound like they're black and white. They aren't. It's all shades of gray. Given any circumstance and situation, but we have these guidelines that when we understand them, to some level, and we have them percolating in our mind, they can be really helpful in giving us clues as to what choices to make in order to purify the ugly situation, plant seeds of merit, goodness, and just plain plant seeds of goodness in the circumstance of ordinary, everyday interaction with the others of our world. Right? We see what to avoid doing. And then if you look at the opposite, it helps us see what kinds of, habits to grow, which I find more useful. Okay, so these are the first 16 of the secondary vows. Yes, Joanna.
The last one, I have a question. So what kind of karma are we collecting if we are being wrathful? Because in the example with Buddha as a bodhisattva killing this one guy to prevent him killing, he still collected the karma of killing for himself. So
Right.
as a bodhisattva, we would be willing to take on the karma. Is this correct?
Right. Right. So if you take that example further, the ship captain was willing to take on the karma of being killed by someone who knew that in doing so, they were protecting that someone, and in doing so, they moved their mind to a higher place. Isn't that part of the seed?
So the intention would be part of the seed for the wrathful deed also? I mean,
Right.
like the intention, yes, but it's
Right.
still collecting the karma, but
Right.
with the intention. Okay.
Right. So, if I do the wrathful thing to my 3-year-old, plants the seeds that somebody's going to be wrathful to protect my life. Thank you very much. Be as wrathful as you want. Right?
Thank you.
Because that's what works in the situation.
Thank you.
Good. So remember that person we wanted to be able to help. Because we wanted to help, we learned what we learned in a deeper way than we would have if we had just listened, for our own benefit. And so we have made double great goodness. And so I invite you to be happy with yourself. And think of this goodness like a beautiful glowing gemstone that you can hold in your hands. Recall your own precious holy guide. See how happy they are with you. Feel your gratitude to them, your reliance upon them. Ask them to please stay close, to continue to guide you, help you, inspire you. And then offer them this gemstone of goodness. See them accept it and bless it. And then carry it with them. Right back into your heart. See them there, feel them there. Their love, their compassion, their wisdom. It feels so good, we want to keep it forever. And so we know to share it. By the power of the goodness that we've just done, may all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom and thus gain the two ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom make. So use those 3 long exhales to share this goodness with that one person, to share it with everyone you love, to share it with every existing being everywhere. See them all filled with happiness, filled with loving kindness. And may it be so. All right. Thank you again for the opportunity to share. I'm stopping the recording.